Welcome to the Expansive Astrology Podcast, where we look at using astrology beyond the tropes and horoscopes to tune into the natural forces around us and within us, honoring our true nature to craft our future. I'm your host, Melissa, the Self-Care Witch, and I'm here to help you meet your magic. Without further ado, let's begin this week's episode with a tarot reading for the collective. Hi! Welcome back to the podcast. It's episode 27, and today we're diving in even deeper with Scorpio. We're going to be talking about some of the invitations that Scorpio brings for us to connect with like the deepest parts of ourselves, the most like raw, deepest parts of ourselves, connecting with our intuition. Also, like how we defend those deep, soft, vulnerable parts of ourselves. So, I have a good episode for you this week. It's probably one of my favorites of the whole Expansive Astrology program. Is this week and next week are two of my very all-time favorites. But first things first, as always, tarot reading for the collective. This is my second time recording. I've been having some tech issues, so I've already pulled the spread so you don't hear me shuffling. Take what you need and leave the rest from this, right? This is for the collective, so some things might really resonate when you hear them today. Some things might not land quite the same. Either way, I do encourage you to stay open to seeing how these things may play out for you over the coming week, whether it's really resonating today or not, because I do trust that if you're listening to this, you were meant to hear this. So we have a 4-card spread, and present for us is the 7 of Swords, and that is supported by the 8 of Wands. The 7 of Swords is one of my favorite cards, probably. It's kind of like a mini lover's card, and 2022 is a 6 in numerology, and that's the lovers. So this year, collectively, we're all kind of learning a lover's experience. So I like that this showed up today. I also like it in terms of what we're going to be talking about later with the expansive astrology. The 7 of Swords. So swords always invite us to engage with the brain in some sort of way. All of the sword cards invite us to look at how we're engaging with the brain. And in this card, we are invited to make sure that we are not falling for the like typical brain trick of waiting or wishing for something more than what we are or more than what we have, something beyond what we have. Like the brain trick where we convince ourselves that we need something that we don't yet have in order to feel complete and whole. Once I reach this milestone, then I can, whatever, anything. We do this in all sorts of ways. Once I lose 10 pounds, then I will dress cute. Once my husband starts picking up around the house more, then I'll stop withholding sex. Once my boss finally shows me some appreciation, then maybe I'll like this job. Anything that we are externalizing, any part of our experience that we are externalizing, like this card has us just look at that and reclaim the thing. So in the Pamela Coleman Smith illustration, we see a being, a person with 5 swords in their hands. Their arms are full of swords, giant swords. Like they could barely carry more if they tried, right? And they are already walking away. They are in motion. They are moving away. And yet their head, they're like breaking their neck, craning their neck, looking back at 2 swords that are left behind, still stuck in the ground. Almost as if wondering, should I go back and get those swords? Don't I need those swords too? And again, their arms are full, their body is in motion. but their head can't help but wonder, like, don't I need those other swords? And this, we get an invitation to turn our head and just be in what we are and be in what we have and trust that if we do need those other swords, they'll arrive for us. Like, we don't need to be breaking our neck, craning, looking back, looking in the past. We don't need to lose focus from where we are and what we have, wondering about those swords, because if they were meant for us and if they are actually necessary and if they're going to end up in our arms, they're going to end up in our arms. And we won't have to break our back to make it happen. It's just going to happen for us, or they will like make themselves present for us in our path. We get to learn what it means to feel whole and complete and capable and deserving and competent and totally worthy. We get to learn what it means to feel whole with what is in our arms. And it's a good thing to strive for more and to have goals and to have dreams and wishes and like a vision for what more you do want to cultivate and bring into your life. Like, most of us are always like striving for something, right? We're always reaching for something. That's not the problem. The problem is when we disempower ourselves in the present, or we get so caught up in what we don't have or what is to come or what we're longing for or waiting for, what those other two swords represent. Like, we get so caught up in what is not in our arms that we miss what is in our fucking arms. And when we miss what is in our arms, when we're missing the present moment, we're missing the opportunities to alchemize the moment, to use our power, to use our magic, to use our resources in order to actually take action and actually do something that will actually bring in what those other swords represent, that will actually get us closer to the thing that we are externalizing. But we have to feel complete and competent, and we have to be focused on what we are and what we have, and like really fully work from there in order to get anywhere, right? Now, that work of showing up fully and wholly and feeling worthy and valuable and full and whole as you are, even while dreaming of more and expanding into more, that work of doing that, of reclaiming a sense of worthiness and wholeness this week, that is supported by the work that comes with the Eight of Wands. And this is like a card of trusting the timing of our lives, trusting divine timing, and kind of evaluating how we show up when we don't have any control, when things are up in the air, or when we've done all we can do and now it's out of our hands. How do you meet that moment when you don't know where you're going to land? And this can show up in a couple like really external, obvious ways, like after you submit an application and like you've done all the work that you can when it was in your hands, and now it's out of your hands and you're just waiting to see where it lands and how it lands and what comes back to you, right? Or after a first date, maybe, when things feel out of your control and out of your hands. You've thrown some energy out there, you've put something out there, and now it's out of your hands, and you kind of just have to sit back and wait and see where it all lands and what comes of that. How do you meet those moments? The Eight of Wands like has us looking at like, because some of us, even when things are completely out of our hands and completely out of our control, the wands help us look at how we're using our energy, how we're engaging with our energy. And when things are completely out of your control, like, how are you spending your energy? Like, some of us still kind of, um, grasp or cling or contract and try to spend a whole lot of fire and a whole lot of energy trying to grasp for some semblance of control, even when things are truly out of our control. So there's like a call for discernment here, right? Like knowing how and when to use your energy, knowing when you're the actions that you're taking, or the ways that you're engaging with the world, or the ways that you're engaging with your fire, knowing when that is ultimately useless. If something's out of your hands, it's out of your hands, baby, and you can like save your energy, like use that energy um, in a useful way, in an effective way. Like, don't burn yourself out trying to control things that you cannot control. Don't burn yourself out trying to control things that are out of your hands. Feeling whole as we are, Seven of Swords, and surrendering to what we can't control. Um, and these two combined really kind of bring an invitation to like be present with what is. Be present with what is in your arms, in your hands. Be present with the present moment. Don't get too caught up in wondering what swords are not in your arms and how are you going to get them. And don't get too caught up in wondering where are all of these wands going to land. And again, just in case you need to hear this, this isn't about not wanting or not dream. Like, you're allowed to dream, you're allowed to long for more, you're allowed to wonder where you're gonna land, right? Like, it's not a problem until it's a problem. Wondering about the two swords that you've always wanted, and wondering if or when they're gonna come into your path and how you can make that more likely. That's not a problem, right? It's really natural until it becomes a problem, until we start to feel um, so caught up in what we don't have that we feel incomplete in what we do have. Wondering where our wands are going to land and feeling uncomfortable with things being up in the air or out of our hands, out of our control, like the contraction that comes with that, it's not a problem until it becomes a problem, right? Until we start um, like hyper vigilantly or maladaptively trying to grasp for control over things that we have no control over. So I like this duo. I could talk about it for 8 more years. But moving on to our lesson for the week, what we're learning this week is Six of Cups. The Six of Cups has us look at our exchange, like with the world, how we are approaching the world, like from the heart. The invitation is to approach the world with a very open heart, giving and receiving with the heart of a child, with the enthusiasm of a child, with the sense of fullness and abundance and completeness that a child has, you know? Yeah, the Six of Cups is about touching in with our inner child, opening our heart to that part of us and letting that part of us be received in the world, and all the sixes are evaluating like a give and take. So, how we are being received in the world and how we are receiving others, right? So, the Six of Cups, I like to actually talk about the Five of Cups when I pull the Six of Cups, because the Five of Cups is what helps us learn the depth of our heart and helps us do this. In the Five of Cups, it's like the grief card, it's a loss card. In the Five of Cups, we are just moving through a sense of betrayal, a sense of loss, the devastation, an inability to be with what we have and just being consumed by what we've lost. That's what happens in the Five of Cups. Like, we are learning grief and loss and coping with that and feeling it, not shying away from it. We are fucking feeling it when we're in the 5 of cups. And that that work, that heart opening, heartbreaking, heart cracking work is necessary for us to get to the depths of our love, the depths of our heart. Maybe I don't want to say it quite like that. I hate to think that it's necessary for a heart to break in order for it to love, but I do love what Joanna Macy says. Joanna Macy says the heart that breaks open can contain the whole universe. And it's when we can be with the whole depth of our experience, right? That helps us touch in with our inner child. It helps us show up in the world in a more open, honest, raw, willing way. Like the 6 of cups. And in these cups, um, they're all full of flowers, white flowers, like we see in like the Fool card. Like there's just such a purity there. There's such a abundance there. And we get to the 6 by moving through the 5. The heart that breaks open can hold the whole universe. That is 6 of cups. So what we're learning this week is how to be in the whole depth of our heart, and that really fits with what we're talking about with the expansive astrology and inspired by Scorpio. This week, 6 of cups, we're learning how to stay in our sweet heart. And I say this a lot, that like we live in a world that gives us every fucking reason to harden our heart and close it off and close it up, board it up, and completely shut it off, shut it down, stay disconnected and numbed from it. Like, don't even try. There's so much pain, so much fear. Like, there are so many reasons. And it takes a lot of courage, a lot of work, a lot of bravery, a lot of hope, a lot of trust, a lot of surrender to do the work, to have an open heart in the face of the type of world that we live in, you know, in spite of the world that we live in, or as an act of love toward the world that we live in, despite all odds, Um, So that's some of the invitations of the 6 of Cups, which is in our lesson spot this week. And given everything I've said, what we're invited to really anchor in with, like the rest is kind of unfolding for us. It's present for us. We're learning it. But what we're invited to like do, what we're invited to anchor in with is the star, the nervous system healer of the tarot. And kind of similar to how I described the 6 of Cups, where first I described the 5 of Cups, um, the star comes after the Tower. The Tower, where Mars comes in and assists us with getting rid of what isn't working, knocking down, shaking up what needs to be shaken, that we aren't really brave enough or willing to do for ourselves. The Tower comes in, Mars comes in and does it for us so that we can get to the heart of the matter and do the necessary tending and foundation work that needs to be done underneath whatever tower just came down. So the star is kind of like the card that meets us there at ground zero after the tower has just been um, destroyed, knocked down. What do we do then with that foundation, with that soil? What do we do in that place? How do we caretake ourselves, nurture our soil? How do we meet that place? The nervous system healer of the tarot. Really tender, loving care with ourselves, with our system, not skipping any part of what it means to be in relationship with our nervous system and be tending our nervous system, right? Like we bypass and ignore or shut down our connection with our nervous system often, right? And we put off or bypass or minimize or avoid um, the tender loving care and the nurturing that it deserves often as well. So I'm thinking of, like, for me, the times that, like, there's one time in particular that I was headed to like a lunch or a dinner or something, and in the car ride over there, everything in my body was like, everything in my system, my spirit, my body was like anxious, on edge, activated, contracted. Everything in my system was saying, you don't want to do this. You don't feel safe doing this. Um, you don't have, you don't want to, I don't want to go to this. I'm afraid of this. I don't want to do this. And it would have been a radical thing for me to honor that and for me to cancel so last minute. And that's what the star would have us do. That's what my nervous system was begging me to do. Um, and knowing that there's a difference between, like, this was just it wasn't just that I was uncomfortable and I was scared, right? Because I have, like, I have anxiety. And if every time my anxiety was telling me, oh, you don't want to do this, you're scared, this is scary. Um, if I took that call every time, I would never, like, go to the fucking grocery store. I would never make any phone calls, I would never do anything um, if I avoided everything that made me anxious. So that's certainly not what I'm saying. But really having a relationship with our nervous system where we're not ignoring what it says. And in the example I gave, I was straight up ignoring, like, it was more than just anxiety. And not only was I still going, still forcing myself to do this thing that my whole system and my whole spirit, my whole body was screaming at me, please no, please God, no. Uh, Not only was I forcing myself to do it, but I also wasn't really tending myself through that. I wasn't taking care of myself. So, like, double whammy of not being the star, like, not tending the nervous system. If you're gonna force yourself to do something that your nervous system is against, you better at least be tending yourself through it in a very full, unapologetic, like, complete radical way. TLC, tender loving care to every part of yourself in a very foundational way, like in all of the most foundational ways, meaning like feeding yourself well, hydrating yourself, talking to yourself nicely, treating your body with kindness and care, treating your spirit with kindness and care, talking to yourself gently, like um, the most foundational of ways of tending yourself, grounding, like doing it by the book, taking care of yourself by the book so that you can shine. Like, some people say that that's what the star is about, is like shining and being like a star, being seen. Um, and I think, like, being seen or being a star in that way that we think of it, that's a natural result of that tender loving care, that nervous system healing, that nervous system work. I think that's a natural result, but I don't think that's what the star card is about. You know what I mean? One last piece to this is that the star card is ruled by Aquarius, and Aquarius is the water bearer. Aquarius is here to, like, serve the collective, to, like, change the planet, to um, serve in some way, to bring the water to others in some way. So this is, it's like selfish of you not to fucking do this. That's what I want to say about that. It's like this star work is um, necessary for the good of the planet, for your purpose on the planet. And, like, we give best to others, we serve others best by first, in the most foundational of ways, in the fullest of ways, serving ourselves, caring for ourselves. Um, And the natural result of that is we will shine like a star. And another natural result of that is we will be better stewards of the planet. We will be better able to show up and serve in our sweet little world, in our sweet little ways, and our sweet big ways. uh, so, so, what we're invited to do this week is really take care of ourselves in all the ways. What we're learning is how to be in a harsh world with the heart and the openness of a child. And present for us is an invitation to feel whole and complete with what we have and where we are, and to trust that, like, what is out of our control, it'll still land us where we need to get us. You don't have to control everything, to have a good life. Like, you can surrender to what is out of your control. Um, I hope that feels uh, really anchoring and lovely for you. Now, let's move into our expansive astrology discussion for the week. We're diving into something about Scorpio is like about being in the underbelly, being in like the depths of ourselves and the depths of the universe, the underbelly of the universe. So let's go there, shall we? Known as a highly intuitive energy, Scorpio season seems to be the perfect time to explore our own connection with our intuition. So, this week we're diving into the depths of ourselves, touching back in with our intuition and learning to trust that space. And this is aptly timed because Sagittarius will bring even more medicine around living from a soul centered place. When it comes to intuition, I believe this looks different for everyone, and no one can truly tell you how to do it. You don't need anyone to tell you how to do it. And they couldn't if they tried. You can get there. It's within you. You know how already. That's the first big thing to learn and remember. Part of the whole deal is trusting your inner knowing. So again, no one can truly teach this to you. I'm here to share my knowing with you, which is based on my experience. And you have your own knowing and experience and relationship with your own intuition and the universe that is just as valid as mine and just as valid as any other teacher. And it is likely different. In fact, I'm sure it's different. I hope it's different. And I'd love to hear how it's different for you. I love talking about the different ways that we connect to ourselves and the different ways that intuition shows up for ourselves. And it's wonderful to connect in that way. And it's wonderful to read from others and to have mentors and teachers. And it is so important to trust ourselves first. And I'm reminded of some of the things that I used to seek answers for, like in the very beginning of my witchy journey. Like baby witch Melissa had no trust in herself. I didn't I was constantly looking for the answers outside of myself, looking for the how it works for everybody else and the how to. Like that's what the brain wants, right? Is like, how does this work? How do I do this? Um yeah. Yeah. And I would search for um everything, all the things, how to bless a cup of tea. That's the one I always kind of smile at myself for, because um, even as I was searching for that, I think I had messaged a teacher or commented on a post or something where they were talking about blessing their tea, and they said like, always make sure you bless your tea. Um, you know, always. uh, and I asked her, how do you do that? And I don't know, maybe that's a valid question, but also even as I was asking it, I know what it means to bless a cup of tea. Like I know what that means to me. I don't need to know how other people do it. I had a knowing of what that meant to me. And if that's something that you truly like are wondering about, it is a fair question, but it wasn't for me because as I was asking it, I had my answer. I knew what that meant to me. But I was just so caught up in doing it right, quote unquote, right. So caught up in finding the answers to this intuition stuff, to the spirituality stuff. So caught up in doing it right, being a good witch, uh, that I had no trust for my inner knowing, for what I knew that meant. Like I said, we all have intuition, but for most of us, it has been strategically and systematically shoved into the depths of our psyche. Like, think of all the ways we're taught to question ourselves, to do the right thing, to do what we're supposed to do, whatever that means, to follow a very strict and rigid set of standards for how to be in the path that we're supposed to take, right? And like capitalist culture does not benefit from us living from a soul based place. And like our intuition, our soul, our spirit, it's drained from us by 40-hour work weeks and fluorescent lighting and overconsumption and constant marketing and the patriarchy and self medication and so many other things. The witch moon. So, my first invitation for you is to start to notice all the ways we disconnect from ourselves, doubt ourselves, distract ourselves. Notice these moments and recenter. Like, become acutely aware of all the ways that your culture and your brain try to keep you questioning your gut and try to keep you disconnected from your center. They can measure the frequencies that we emit when we are in certain feelings or certain emotions. And the literal lowest vibe feeling that we can have, like not just talking about low vibes and high vibes in a woo woo way, but in a very literal, measurable way. The lowest frequency, the lowest vibrating energy that we emit is when we're in fear, when we're afraid. So, like, just think of all the ways that our culture, our society feeds into fear and how naturally our systems and our bodies like give into fear. Of course, all the ways that we question ourselves and stay disconnected from our center. We stay stuck in fear where there's no movement. So here we are, reclaiming our magic, which we can do at any time of day. The first thing to do is to state your intention. Directly ask for clear guidance. Express your intention to connect with your guides, yourself, the universe, the new tarot deck, whatever it is. Directly ask for that connection, for that knowing. Free will is a big key when we're talking about all of this woo-woo stuff, when we're talking about um, connecting with our guides and our intuition, when we're talking about how the universe unfolds for us. Like free will is a big key here. It's important that we express your want, that you express that you want and are available to tap in and hear from your guides. And guides meaning like just your gut, um, your intuition, God, the universe, spirit, your ancestors, angels, deities, gods, your inner knowing, signs, um, and all of the above. Like anything that feels supportive and leading. Um, and that's what I mean by a guide. So, the first step to like connecting with your intuition is to directly and intentionally intend to do so. And I know that's kind of stupid to say, to intentionally intend to do something, but like I emphasized it for a reason, get very direct and very intentional in stating like this is something that I want to do. This is something I'm committed to. This is something I'm open to. This is something that I'm willing to like start a journey with and through and on. Uh, this journey of connecting to my guides, to my intuition, to my inner knowing. Uh, Directly ask for that, directly state that intention. And then next is where you start to practice. Start to practice connecting with your first instinct. And this can be really fun. Encourage the volume on your instincts to get louder by acknowledging those instincts. One way I would do this was by, like, guessing which of my clients would attend sessions and which would cancel. Or, like, early in our relationship, my husband and I would go to bingo with his parents, and I would, kind of play with my intuition or my instincts there. Um, Find easy ways to play with your instincts in your day-to-day life. And it's important that you don't doubt the signs that you see, or the callings, the sensations, the little chimes of knowing, little memories or coincidences or synchronicities. Like, don't doubt those things. Don't write them off. Like, yes, maybe it is a coincidence. And, like, why does, like, can we infuse magic back into the idea of what a coincidence is? Like, can a coincidence be considered magical? Because the brain will be like, bullshit. It's all just a coincidence. Self-fulfilling prophecy. Our brain wants to write these things off. It's like, yeah, right. That wasn't magic. That was just meant to happen. That was just a coincidence. Again, as if that makes it less magical. Like, I don't know. Like you can thank the brain for being so logical and for keeping you like grounded and rooted in reality. And you can kindly and respectfully tell it to, like, shut up. And we'll talk more about that later. But, like, stay open to signs, right? Signs look different for everyone, and they come in all shapes and forms. Some see, some hear, some feel intensely. This is for you to practice with and begin to notice. Some examples are like um, an email not sending may be nothing, or it may be a signal to slow down, rewrite the email, or to recenter before sending. A ringing in your ear might be nothing, or it may be a cue to you that you need to recenter and listen in. A lump in your throat, getting caught in traffic, butterflies in your stomach, a certain song playing in the department store. Don't doubt the signs. Tap in. Remember, it might not always make sense to the brain. So, like, don't second guess. We don't need to know all the details and all the answers. We don't need to know the specifics. Go with your gut, even without all the details. And a wise witch once reminded me that a rock could be a sign, but mostly it's just a rock. And I really like that reminder that, like, yeah, maybe being stuck in traffic, maybe that's a sign. Or maybe it's just that we got stuck in traffic that time. Like, roll with it. Don't overthink it. My next suggestion, kind of easy way to start to strengthen your inner knowing, is to simply use hindsight. Those times when you're like, "Oh, I knew it." Like, really be with those moments. Notice when those little things occur when you're like, "Oh, I knew it." And then use hindsight to determine whether you were being divinely guided through something, right? If something unfolded and you knew that that would happen, you gotta kind of like rewind the tape and see if you can put together the pieces of where your knowing came from, what that all felt like, what that looked like, what told you the thing that you knew. Next, I like to recommend learning how to identify what is intuition and what is brain. So, in my opinion, this is where the bulk of the practice comes in. It isn't so easy. Like, the brain is loud, and most of us are in brain all of the time, and we're only taught how to listen to the brain and how to, like, we glorify what the brain says. This isn't easy, and learning to take enough of a pause until we can identify the difference. The brain sometimes needs like a break in order to hear intuition. This is why things will often come to us when we're driving or dreaming or in the shower or like distracted in some other way. The the brain is kind of turned off a little bit and it gives room for intuition to come through. This is why practicing meditation is so important, and presence and space. Practice ways of tapping in physically. This is why embodiment practices and grounding is so important. Um, Intentionally tapping in with our nervous system, with our body, being present for everything physically that wants to come through. And something I've learned is kind of a rule of thumb is we listen to the soul and we question the brain. So when we're hearing some sort of, no, I should do this thing instead, uh, engage with the brain. We can say, I hear you, like, but do we really need to do this thing? Do we have to? Like, what if I don't? What if I don't do this thing the way that my brain thinks I should? Like, what would happen? Because we can feel so intensely one way, something can feel so fucking true, and still hear something different from the soul. Question. Don't be afraid to like question yourself. Check in with yourself. Like, why do I think the way that I'm thinking? Why do I think I have to do this thing? Why do I think I have to show up in this way? Like, what is telling me that? Just question. Question what comes up for you. Feelings, thoughts, brain invitations are still totally valid and belong in the car with us. Like, we're not invalidating those things. We don't want those things to go away. We don't want the brain to just shut down and go away. Like, we're still paying respect to those things, listening to those things, evaluating them when they come up. This is not about demonizing the brain. Brain is valid. We have to validate it or it just keeps screaming. Right? So that's an important piece. It's like hearing the brain, acknowledging it, validating it, and making it a decision from there. So, what does this look like? Like I said, acknowledging and validating, having a running, respectful dialogue with your brain. Like, saying like, I am feeling or hearing a strong pull to fill in the blank. Do I have to do this? Is this keeping me safe? Like, what if I decide not to do this? I am safe. Okay, yeah, I'll be safe. I'll be safe whether or not I take this invitation. Thanks, brain, but I know I'm safe. I'm going to play and expand and explore and see what happens. And yeah, this feels risky. You're right. This is not the safe option. I'm going to go ahead with it regardless. Thank you, brain. Thank you so much for your service. I will catch you next time. Thanks for keeping me safe. I promise we're safe. I'm going to explore a little bit. I'm going to do the crazy thing. Just having a running dialogue with the part of ourself that wants to keep us contracted and small and safe. Having an open dialogue there, hearing that part and choosing whether or not to heed its call. You don't have to do everything the brain tells you to do. You don't have to believe everything it says, right? So I have some other tips that I've just gathered, just a few that I've gathered from my own teachers, my own readings, my own experience. Guides and soul, the spirit and God never use the word should, but brain does all the time. When we hear, but what will people think? What will people think? People won't like that. People won't agree with me. That sort of thing, that's brain too. When we think we'll lose something if we don't do a thing, that's brain. If it's very like all or nothing, like you have to do this, it has to be this way or else, that's brain. That's also contracted, right? So fear-based. Usually if it's very fear-based, that's usually the brain. That's usually not intuition. And that fact, I really believe that that's a fact. And it consoles me when I'm struggling with intrusive thoughts, which I do struggle with sometimes, especially as a mama. And those intrusive thoughts suck. Not that there's any intrusive thought that doesn't suck, but it can be really hard as a person who's intuitive and has intrusive thoughts to know, like, oh my God, is this my intuition telling me that I'm in massive danger right now and I need to grab my baby and run for the nearest exit? Is this my intuition? Why is this feeling so strong? Um, y- and use your discretion, like really learn how to touch in here, learn how and when to doubt yourself, right? And like if you're feeling, whether it's intuition or an intrusive thought, if you can't shake the sense that you need to get outside, give yourself that, right? But like knowing that um, intrusive thoughts, anxiety, brain chemistry, it's all very fear-based, it's all very contracted. Our guides and our intuition tends to be quiet and quick. It tends to be, and we'll talk about this a little more in a moment, but it tends to be uh, our first quiet inkling tends to be our soul. It tends to be our spirit. It tends to be our guides. And the brain really quickly comes in and distracts us from that first inkling. Learning how to trust that first inkling is it's definitely a skill. So another thing that we can ask, if you're like grappling, like, is this the brain or is this my spirit? You can kind of ask, would this be evolutionary or not? Would this be expansive or no? Does it feel safe or no? Because the brain wants to keep us safe. It wants to keep us contracted and small. So the brain resists expansion. So we can kind of, when we feel ourselves doubting or um, in a whole lot of resistance, you can usually check in and you can usually know that that contraction, that resistance is probably coming from your brain. Our soul isn't afraid to mess up. Our soul isn't afraid to be seen as foolish. Our soul isn't afraid to take a risk and expand, right? The brain very much is. And that keeps us safe. So I'm not saying don't listen to your brain, right? But it's learning how to have a brain that supports our soul. And most of us need to learn how to hear the soul at all. And as a rule, the soul never lies. Like, even those times when things didn't go as we thought they would, or when we feel like we totally fucked up by listening to an internal yes or no, we can have faith that the soul never lies. We got sirens going off because I'm spitting fire here. Oh my God, I hate that I just said that. I thought it'd be funny, but I just hate it. But it's true. Okay, the soul never lies. So even when we're in those moments where things didn't go like we thought, and we feel like we should have, um, we should have done something different, when we feel like we fucked up somehow, we can have faith that the soul never lies. So even when it feels like we've been led astray or tricked, that's totally brain speak. That's totally the brain being like, ooh, see, I knew it. I knew this would be a bad idea. I knew that we should stay safe and small. And now look, now you're sad and hurt and disappointed. Like, no, brain. Like, the brain likes to see it that way because the brain likes to think that it could see what was coming. The brain likes to think that it's always right. So we like to say, like, oh, I knew that was going to happen, especially when things go wrong. But the soul never lies. So when we are living a soul-centered existence, we can know that every experience, every yes, and every no was meant for our expansion. It's meant for our growth. It's meant to help us. And the expansion doesn't always look pretty, and it isn't all about love and light and fluff. It'll leave us totally embarrassed sometimes. That doesn't mean that your soul lied or that you fucked up by listening. It simply doesn't. So, how do you learn to trust your intuition? Working with the brain isn't just about those moment to moment situations where we're seeking a yes or a no. In fact, it's rarely as simple as a yes or a no. It's also about allowing ourselves to trust our intuitive knowing. The brain will bring us into all sorts of beliefs like, this is silly. You're not intuitive enough. Oh, it's just this woo-woo shit. Your brain can say that. And you can trust regardless. Identify those narratives as your brain trying to keep you from appearing crazy or making mistakes or whatever, and trust regardless. Lindsay Mack says the stronger the stories our brains tell us about our intuition, the better. The stronger something is, the more the brain tends to shit all over it. So she says, if your brain is really attacking your intuition, you got to have some major gifts in there that your brain is fucking terrified that once you get to know your gifts and touch in with them, you won't rely on the brain as much. So the brain is panicking. About the relationship between the brain and the soul, Lindsay Mack also says, quote, "The brain is hard. The soul is a hell of a lot harder because you're going to disappoint people in soul. You're going to actually stand up for yourself in soul. You're going to have potentially greater self-respect, greater autonomy, greater boundaries. There's going to be a lot that's going to happen that's going to make people a little angry that you're not laying down and doing it in a way that makes them feel more comfortable. They're not going to like it." Unquote. It's rebellious. It's rebellious. It's a radical thing to live from the soul. So affirm for yourself. Say to yourself, I trust my gut. It is safe to trust my gut. I am safe. I trust where I am being guided. I am opening to my heart. And even more of all of this in a few weeks in Sagittarius season, when we'll talk about temperance and living from a very soul-centered place. Before we wrap up for the week, let me share with you a brief astrological forecast. I'm just sharing some of the more major transits and the times that the moon is void of course. Not in an attempt, or I'm not recommending that you overly structure your life around these things, but more so that you can stay aware and stay observant of how these things may play out for you as they unfold. Also, there's a recommendation that when the moon is void of course, meaning it's between signs, that we kind of take a break from goal oriented external activity and we center back in with really like nourishing internal, like slow self care things, kind of take the pressure off of ourselves. And I always say, any opportunity to do that, I'll take. um, so this episode is coming out a little late this week, so I actually don't have much for you. Wednesday the 9th, the moon is void of course from 7 a.m. until it enters Gemini at 8:37 a.m. And then Friday, 11/11, the moon is void of course from 5:28 p.m. until it enters Cancer at 7:22 p.m. Monday, the 14th, the moon is void of course from 5:41 a.m. until it enters Leo at 7:48 a.m. Next week's episode is all about desire and taboo. We're really touching in with what you desire. That I'm really looking forward to. And we'll have a little Scorpio wrap up. We'll chat about what's to come in Sagittarius season. Also, a reminder that you're invited to my next moon circle. The next one is Sunday the 20th, 6 p.m. Mountain Time, either in person in Old Town Fort Collins if you're local, or you can tune in via Zoom. This one will be in preparation for the new moon in Sagittarius. So, setting intentions for Sagittarius season. I'm really looking forward to that. Also, if you're interested in supporting the podcast, just a reminder of my membership option, the Meet Your Magic monthly membership. For just $21 a month, you can support the podcast. And in exchange, you get an all access pass to my moon circles. You can show up anytime you would like. You also get a monthly 5-card tarot spread in your inbox. It's still a pretty new offer and it's been really fun. And I'm so thankful to those of you who have joined as members so far. Your support means so much to me. And I'll just drop this little tidbit at the very end here. I have some very exciting things coming to the podcast. A major opportunity has kind of dropped into my lap. I'm still like super jazzed about it, like exploding, bursting at the seams with excitement about it. So like your support while my podcast is still very new and small and like I'm still building this thing. Those of you who are here every week supporting me, like, man, I love you so much. I'm so thankful for you. Thank you for being here. Thank you to my members. It means the freaking world to me. So, on that note, I will leave you here. Thank you for being here. I'll see you next week. Take care. Bye. Now, before you go, let me keep your ear for just a moment. This week's episode is brought to you by www.theselfcarewitch.com. My bread and butter, where you can find more information on my current courses, offerings, and other fun ways to connect with myself and yourself. If you enjoyed this episode and you dig what I'm doing here, please subscribe to the podcast, rate it, and leave a review. It helps so much. And if you'd like to connect with me, head to theselfcarewitch.com. I'd truly love to hear from you. Until next time, take care.